Hello everyone. Today we are talk about the topic of income inequality from a global perspective. Our team members are Sun Haoyang, Xiong Yubing, Deng Qingwen, Yang Shaohua. This is the outline of our presentation today. First, let's see the background. Now, rising inequality has become a widespread concern. The inequality within which we call the emerging markets and developing countries has increased. Just like Obama said, this problem is the defining challenge of our time. Why does this kind of phenomenon need our attention? We know that the inequality problem can be a signal of a lack of income, mobility, and opportunity, reflecting the persistent disadvantage for particular segments. In addition, rising inequality also has critical implications for growth and macroeconomic stability, which may lead to a suboptimal use of human resources, and finally causes investment reduction in stability. Thus, focusing on the drivers of this problem can be meaningful. And speaking of the first thing we can find is although some measures of global inequality show a declining trend, the general global income inequality remains high. And according to the Gini coefficients of gross and net incomes, the income inequality has increased since 1990, especially in most developed countries. Also, statistics show that the poverty in many EMDCs has declined despite rising in developed countries. Okay, now let's move to the key drivers behind the inequality. According to a study conducted by IMF, the estimation model shows that three components have significant impacts on inequality, that is, financial globalization, trade globalization, and technology change. Here we find that technological progress alone explains nearly 45% annual average increase in Gini coefficient. Globalization and financial, depending together, contribute about 10% a year. Okay, first, let's start with the financial globalization factor, which has proceeded rapidly over the past 2 decades. And just like the graph shows, there exists a positive correlation between FDI and Gini, which represents financial globalization and inequality, respectively. In both developing and developed countries, financial globalization and foreign direct investment in particular is associated with increase in income inequality. And as for developing countries, the bulk of the FDI goes into low-end manufacturing and natural resources sectors, increasing the employment opportunities and income for those who have higher skills than those, for example, agriculture workers. As for the developed countries, FDI often goes into skill-intensive and high-technology sectors, raising the income of those who are better educated and already have higher incomes, which further exacerbates the income inequality problem. And financial liberalization especially increased the flow of FDI to median income countries. These flows enhanced investment in secondary and tertiary sectors of the income economy, boosting wages of those either already possessing skills or able to acquire them. And the second driver we want to emphasize is trade globalization. Based on the regression result, one standard deviation increase in the export to GDP ratio means that would reduce the Gini by 3.4%, suggesting the trade liberalization seems to reduce inequality. But the impact varies from developing countries and developed countries. For developing countries, the beneficial effects of trade on reducing inequality are noticeable due to the agriculture exports. First, opening up the trade in agriculture increases the income of those who rely on agriculture for their livelihood. The shift under and the shift of underemployed agriculture workers to manufacturing or service also increases the relative productivity of agriculture, raising the income of those who continue depending on agriculture and are usually the lowest earning ones. Third, tariff reduction is also related to the reduction in inequality by allowing cheaper imports to substitute more expensive domestically produced consumption or intermediate inputs. Well, for developed countries, however, the impact on wage inequality from greater trade integration seems to be neutral. On the one hand, to the extent that non-competing imports are available more easily and at a lower price. Moreover, lower-paying low-end manufacturing jobs are substituted by higher-paying service sectors in the expanding retail and consumer finance sectors. And what's more, imports from other advanced economies may make the situation worse because higher end imports are likely to affect higher paying domestic employment that may not be readily substituted by new service sectors employment opportunities. Those imports can also form a small component of the consumption basket of the poor segment of the population. In addition, the impact of technology on inequality is also related to that of FDI. Technological progress in all countries increase the premium on skills and tends to substitute away low-skill inputs, which thus increase the relative demand for higher skills, thereby accelerate the inequality in income. Moreover, in developing countries, the use of technology is widespread in both manufacturing and services, affecting the substantial segment of the economy. Among developing countries, the adverse effect of technology on income inequality is more evident in Asia than in Latin America because many Asian countries have larger share of manufacturing sector. And overall, the results suggest that both globalization and technology tend to increase the returns to skills in both developed and developing countries, while income have increased across all segments of the population. The incomes of already well off have increased by disproportionately more during the recent era of globalization. That's all of our presentation. Thanks for your listening.